Welcome viewers to this series of lectures on the various stages of early Indian economy, and in the previous interactions we have spoken about several phases of early Indian economy, ranging from hunting-gathering stage across to civilization stage, that is Harappan civilization, across to early Vedic period, which was pastoral kind of society, and thereafter the later Vedic stage, 6th century BC, middle of the first millennium BC stage, which triggered urbanization and trade, commerce in a big way, coming of territorial state, across to the Mauryan times, which gave the pan-Indian perspective to economy, in the sense that the entire landmass, the subcontinental landmass, was brought into some kind of linkage, economic linkage with each other. And this particular discussion, the set of two discussions, is around the next stage, subsequent to the Mauryan stage, and that is the post-Mauryan period. When we say post-Mauryan period, the time bracket that we have in reckoning is, you can say, 2nd century BCE to around 3rd century Common Era. So it is this 500 years, 400 years that we are talking of. So once the Mauryan rule ended, thereafter the period from there to up to the beginning of the Gupta period, which is again a dynastic political appellation for economic changes, which is not ideally suited. There can be better nomenclatures than this, but we have chosen so because historians have designated it in such a way which is, you can say, a hangover of historians' preoccupation with political things, dynastic things. It is something that you don't find lingering that much in recent writings. Nevertheless, to make sense of things, the way we store things in mind, well, this is a very handy kind of appellations that we use, political dynastic appellation. So that's the rationale for the name, for labeling of this period as such, post-Mauryan period. Now, as we have done for previous discussions related to stages of early Indian economy, Professor R. S. Sharma has used the phrase small farms, money economy and Roman trade between 200 BC to AD 300 to designate this period. So while for Mauryan period he uses pan-India perspective and state control of economy, for the subsequent period it is small farms, money economy and Roman trade, which typifies the economy of this period. And in this sense, this period's economy is different from the one preceding it, or even the one succeeding it in the Gupta period, where we find feudal beginnings and so forth. So, as the name itself suggests, in terms of departure from what characterized the Mauryan economy, it is the issue of the state control over the sectors of economy established by the Mauryans that is used as backdrop to this discussion. And we will be talking about the level of state control, degree of state control that can be discerned through whatever sources that we have for this period related to economic activities and economic management. For example, we no more hear of state farms, the iconic state farms worked by slaves and hired laborers under the supervision of the superintendent of agriculture, as we did during the Mauryan period. Remember, while talking about the Mauryan economy or the stage preceding this, we did refer to this particular reference time and again. And in fact, this understanding is at the root of designating the Mauryan period as state controlled, extremely bureaucratized, the way Kautilya mentions about different officials managing and supervising different economic activities. The same is reverberated by even Megasthenes' Indica and so forth. But in the post-Mauryan period, perhaps this could be a story of the past, because normatively the general understanding that is something that we historians carry is that probably now the farm size was smaller, and they were owned by individuals, and state is intervening in economy and economic management, all right, but it is not to the degree it did during the Mauryan period. In fact, this post-Mauryan understanding of economic control by the state actually now is used by historians to make a more realistic sense of even the Mauryan economy. And as we discussed in the last interaction of recently, historians now talk of decentralized model of Mauryan economic management rather than the bureaucratized, centralized control of every resource and so forth that conventional history writing around Mauryas beamed to us all across the decades of 1950s, 60s and 1970s. So land in the post-Mauryan period seems to be mainly in possession of individual farmers. There can be views to the contrary, because state presence is registered by some sources, and there are stray references related to that as well. We will talk about it. So the state push towards expanding the agrarian frontiers, which is so central to Mauryan administration, Mauryan economic management, and it seems that Kautilya is so much enamored by this dictum for the king, that the king should make efforts to advance, to extend the agrarian frontiers, so that in future avenues of revenue could be created for the state to sustain itself, or to for the state to amass as much revenue as it could. So this push perhaps now is coming at the behest of the individual efforts. And we will see what are the evidences related to that. For example, in Milindapano, which is a text belonging to this period from Buddhist tradition, we have reference to individuals who clears the forests and takes other steps for making the land fit for cultivation, and one who does it is credited to be the owner of land. So the rationale, so the basis of land ownership is one who puts in efforts, labor, organizes labor to clear the area of timber and make it fit for cultivation. Similarly, Manu, in Manu Smriti, it is referred to that sages declare a field to belong to him who cleared away the timber, and a deer to him who first wounded it. So it's like the way animals are killed in shikar and so forth. Similarly, the one who clears a patch of land from timber is the one who gets the ownership. So that's the basis of ownership that is being spoken of in different texts belonging to the period. So we can say that investment of physical labor in a piece of unclaimed property was supposed to confer on the individual the title to that property. Now this is nothing strange. I mean, this was the basis even earlier, but this continues, and so it also seems that land is perhaps available in plenty. Unclaimed land is available in plenty. And it's all about clearing it, making it fit for cultivation that matters. That's where the premium lay. So we can also say that instead of the state push, now it is the civil level push towards expanding the agrarian frontier that becomes important. Similarly, Gautam and Manu also tell us, they are all texts belonging to this period, post-Mauryan period. They encourage separate households for brothers on the ground that it increases religious merit. Hence, as you can glean through this proposition as well, that premium is on individual possession of land, and hence it is the individual effort that should be ploughed in to clear the land, and they are not leaving it to the state to do it. Divya Vadana, again a text belonging to the postmodern times, tells us that individual farmers in large numbers working hard and engaged in cultivation. So such references are there, and again this is beyond the pale of, or this is outside the pale of state control. So again it is all happening at the civil level, at individual level. Subjects of the Satavahan rulers possessing land individually and giving it, for example, plots of lands of varying size were given away to Buddhist monks, and let me tell you that Satavahan inscriptions actually are the first inscriptional evidence of land grants in early India, although literary evidences are very much there in the period preceding it also. But again, you find that it is the individuals, it is the subject population of Satavahan rulers in Western India, Maharashtra area, who are doing it, who are giving away land, and so this is all happening. The ownership is quite individualized. This is what it seems. But as I said in the beginning, despite the flourishing money economy during the period, it seems unlikely that one could sell and purchase or purchase land for secular purposes. So land was yet to become a commodity that could be freely bought and sold in the market. So land was still not monetized that way. So it seems, as far as references are concerned. But private donors of land in Western Deccan may be treated as a counterpart to the great Sethis of the Buddha's time who enjoyed Bhogagamas. So this is something that we get to hear of in North Indian context. We have spoken about it earlier in our earlier discussion in the previous stages, pre-Mauryan stage, 6th century to Mauryan period stage. So maybe that in process terms, in processual terms, this is what is being replicated here. And you can regard these individual owners who are giving big pieces of land or small pieces of land to religious donees as being the counterparts of what role the Sethis were playing during Buddha's period, or during the middle of the first millennium BC in North India. Or as it seems that maybe that initially they took to trade, amassed money, and then towards the end of their career people preferred to buy some piece of land and live a different kind of lifestyle, the way Greek merchants did, becoming plutocrats. So that's also quite likely, but it's all a question mark. We don't know much about it. These are different ways in which things can be made sense of. But despite all these evidences related to individualized land ownership, the idea of state ownership did exist. And though it was it stood in a very general, diffused sense of territorial sovereignty, nevertheless, state ownership of land was at least theoretically exercised in different sources. The earliest inscriptional evidence of land grant, as I told you, comes from the 1st century BCE, Satavahan ruler granting a village to the priests as a gift during the Ashwamedh sacrifice. So it is again the royal lineage that is organizing this land grant and so forth. This land grant was free from taxes but not administrative rights. So the popular understanding of land grants as a piece of land which is free of taxes and administrative rights and so forth, that is not there. So administrative rights were retained by the royalty, although these donated pieces of land did not entail any tax extraction on part of the state. Gautami Putra Shatakarni, his grant to the Buddhist monks in 2nd century CE couldn't be entered by royal troops or administrative officials. So in between 100 to 150 years, you see the change in the same dynasty that is of Satavahan, that the earlier grants were free from only taxes but not administrative rights. Now, subsequently, by the 2nd century BCE, these grants are coming even with administrative immunity. Similarly, a Satavahan grant belonging to 130 CE to some Buddhist monks iterates that if the land is not cultivated, the village is not settled. So, you can very well see that the state effort to maximize the frontier of agrarian areas is not gone altogether. Hence, state efforts towards augmenting agrarian zone is quite evident even here. Similarly, grants iterating the transfer of control over salt and not mines, water reservoirs, etc. Hence, retention of control over a select source of revenue is very much there in these grants. So, the point that we are trying to make here is that while the state does not seem to have an overriding presence like it did during the Mauryan times, but this emphasis that we are laying on individual ownership of land during the post-Mauryan period and the smallness of farms, farm size, etc., should not lead us into believing that state is just nowhere there. So, they are very much there, but now you see most of the efforts happening, or visible quotient of the efforts happening at the behest of individuals and not entirely by the state as it appeared in the sources during the Mauryan period. Rudra Daman, his period is 150 CE, claims to have constructed or repaired the Sudarshan Lake in Saurashtra region without having burdened his subjects with forced labor, which is Vishti, or benevolent tax, Pranay, and other taxes on their fruits and flowers. Now, these references or these inferences tell us something. If we are talking of the economic scenario during the Mauryan period, during the post-Mauryan period, and we are looking at the presence of the state in economic affairs, in taxation, and so forth, then these are the things to look at. That are the number of taxes incident on farmer increasing or they are decreasing, because iconically or conventionally Mauryans are known for extracting as much revenue from various agricultural operations and other operations to the extent possible. Now, perhaps that concentration, that incident of taxes is easing out in the post-Mauryan period, and that's why one interpretation is that these taxes, benevolent tax of Pranay or Vishti, etc., are not required. Even when Rudradaman, the Shaka ruler, is constructing a welfareist dam or welfareist lake, so to say. So these efforts are being made, but that does not entail extra incident of taxes. So the issue is, are the peasants relieved of these oppressive taxes during the period, or there could be another interpretation of the same? They become additional emergency taxes during the period. One interpretation could be, for example, in the Mauryan period, only Vishti was incident as emergency tax, whereas in the post-Mauryan period, it is also Pranay and taxes on fruits and flowers that become emergency tax as part of emergency tax. So, did they become additional emergency tax during the period? Because these issues need some resolution. Only slaves and hired laborers could be forced to work on state farms during the Mauryan period. This is something we have discussed earlier. But is it that while even the peasants, even the peasants could be burdened with forced labor now. So if it is about taxes, what sense do we make out of this? That while earlier it is only the state farms where hired laborers and vishti, that is forced labor, was deployed, and now maybe it is happening even at the individual level, even at the civil level. So had it become a norm, forced labor? So these are some of the issues that historians keep debating about, and there are some fruitful insights coming out of this debate, this efforts to resolve things related to incident of taxes, forced labor, serfdom, and so forth, coming from the economic scenario of the post-Mauryan period. So this is up to this, and the next part of it we shall be talking about in the subsequent portion. Thank you.